That's particularly why we also will be continuing with this. Just looking ahead, of course, with Devon on to tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's many people will argue in terms of that the budget speech, Devon Murrigan, eNCA business editor, is probably more relevant and more applicable to South Africans than SONA budget, because that's what hurts the pockets. In the end, and we're going to have rolling coverage, of course. So you're heading down to Cape Town in a couple of hours as well. This could be one of the most important budget speech because of the damage we saw during COVID.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the most important budget speech. I mean, we always told that every time the budget comes up. But, you know, you can't deny that. You've just correctly pointed out we had damage from COVID. We had those devastating July riots last year. What? It cost the country about 50 billion rand, Gareth, right? But I think at the end of the day, there was some promise towards the end of the year. Now, what do I mean by that? We've collected far more tax revenue than we'd anticipated in November. We've got about roughly 60 to 80 billion rand more. Here's the question. What do we do with that extra money? We can do several things. One, we can be really good budgeting a bunch of guys and pay off your debt, because we've got this enormous debt, and Maya Fisher just alluded to that. Yeah. Or we could go ahead, throw the money to grants, which is important, or give always the awkward sense of giving it to the state-owned enterprises. But I think what you're going to see in the budget tomorrow is a very prudent approach of how to use that extra cash. Very, very important for your overall fiscal management. And
I can hear some critics screaming at the TV, Devon, saying, but what we shouldn't be doing is giving 50 million rand to Cuba. For example, as well, if the opposition parties have their way on that as well. So just talk to us about coverage. What are we expecting tomorrow morning? We're going to start the build-up, of course, to budget speech tomorrow. Perhaps just remind us what time budget is on the 23rd.
All right, so budget kicks off, as he always does, the finance minister, this time in Ogodongwana. He's barely in the job for about 6 months now. He traditionally will start that budget speech at 2 o'clock. What we do from the morning, and I suppose you'll be involved in this as well, Gareth, is that we're going to speak to the experts on tax. We're going to speak to the anti-poverty activists. We're going to speak to the guys that are representing the youth in this country. I mean, what is it, about 70% unemployment rate just on youth alone? You know, we are told that 3.5 million people between the ages of 15 to 24 are not in work, not in training, not in any form of education. So what the budget puts forward in terms of funding those skilled areas, those upskilling areas, it's going to be very important.
It is going to be important, especially off the back of the comments from the President, Devon, where it was alluded to that government can only do so much when it comes to creating jobs. It's the private sector that has to step in. And what was the Mail and Guardian headline last week? Whose job is it to create jobs? But the problem is the private sector doesn't get a say on budget. That comes from government.
What they always argue is that we'll create the jobs, just give us the environment where it's easy to do business, we'll flourish and we'll absorb the labour. So part of that, and just to bring it back to the budget, the investor community, the business community, will be looking at this budget to say, how is this budget really giving us certainty to plough millions into the economy and create those jobs? So investor certainty from this budget is another big one.
I don't mean to throw a curveball as far as markets are concerned, but how closely do the ratings agencies, for example, like Moody's, etc., start watching the build-up to budget and what the finance minister has to say? How much weight do they really add to the promises made from the finance minister?
Let me tell you quickly why the ratings agency is important, by the way. What the ratings agency does is that it scores you as a country, as an individual, if they are a bank, on how healthy you are to pay back debt. If your economy does not appear to be healthy, if you're not handling debt very well, you're not growing the economy and creating jobs, the rating agency scores you down. We are not on investment grade anymore, which tells you that they did not think that we're managing very well. So what happens tomorrow in terms of the finance minister's reflection of economic growth, of job creation, of systems in place to keep the economy sustainable, the ratings agency will give a nod if they like it.
And just before I say goodbye to you, before you head down to Cape Town for this rolling coverage from tomorrow here on eNCA as well, Devon Murrigan tomorrow is sitting in Cape Town. He's watching the budget speech on TV. What's the one moment where you grab the remote, Devon, and you put up the volume? What's the one thing you want to hear loud and clear?
When the finance minister says we've collected 60 to 80 billion rand, more than we expected in tax revenues from all the good showing mining companies, and we're going to use this money to cancel our debt and place it in job-creating initiatives. That will be a sort of an eye-opener.
I can hear Maya Fisher-French jumping up and down from Cape Town. Pay off the debt is what Maya always says. Devin Murrigan, eNCA business editor, off to Cape Town. You can see he's already got his flying clothes on, Tumza as well. I saw the shoes and I'm like, oh, I feel too dressed for this conversation.
Not very used to these things.
Devin, we'll see you in Cape Town tomorrow. All the best with Budget 2022, our rolling coverage getting underway. Well, of course, we'll start that build-up this evening, no doubt, but rolling coverage, analysts, experts, expectations tomorrow morning from 6 o'clock with you and I.
Absolutely.
Actually, tomorrow morning.
And I'm so happy that, of course, we've got Devin, on the team. If a business book 101 for dummies came in human form, it would be Devin. Because he explains everything so well.
Yes.
If you didn't understand the jargon involved in budget speech, definitely Devin there to break it down for us.
I think it's one of those, speak Gareth to me. Please speak Gareth so I can make sense of what's going on.